Hello. Several years ago, I did an interview discussing the financial principles behind my book, Billionaire Cab Driver. Recently, I rewatched that and realized that the discussions in that were actually more relevant today than they were when I originally recorded them. I decided to remaster this and republish it here because the principles we discussed are timeless. I hope you find it of value.
I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're visiting today with WND author Jody Tallal, who is the author of The Billionaire Cab Driver, Timeless Lessons for Financial Success. Jody, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Jody is a man of many talents and interests, a personal financial manager to wealthy professionals. He became one of the first fee-only advisors in the 1970s. His success led to developing a course to train medical professionals at Baylor Medical School, University of Tennessee Health Sciences, and Tulane Medical School on how to manage their money. He has been named an honorary citizen by several city mayors nationwide and has also received the President's Medal of Merit from former President Ronald Reagan. In 1981, he served on the Chairman's Committee of the United States Senatorial Business Advisory Board. Jody, quite a resume. What got you interested in financial planning?
It's interesting. I was originally involved as a salesperson, became national director of marketing of a company back in the late 60s. And when I was in Dallas, I was doing very well. And when I was in Dallas, I was having dinner with my father. And he had invited a friend of his over for dinner who was the associate academic dean of law at SMU Law School. And he wanted to introduce me to a fellow. And I finally figured out it was a job interview, which I really wasn't interested in because I was already making $40,000 a year, which was a whole lot of money back in '70. But he told me the guy was worth $5 million and he was 25 years old, and that kind of got my interest. So I set up the interview and we talked, and I found out that what he was doing was helping people manage their money, and he offered me the job, and that's how I got into the profession.
You know, how interesting that dads get involved in trying to help their sons out, thinking that they have a better way. Oftentimes they do. When I graduated college in the 70s, I took a job with my training to become a kindergarten teacher. My salary in 1973 was $500 a month, $6,000 a year. And I didn't like it at all. So I called my father, and he said, listen, I'm going to set you up with a guy in New York City. And I took the job as the Wrangler Jeans showroom salesman in New York City for $12,000 a year, plus a corporate apartment, a driver, and an American Express Gold Card. So my life radically changed, and I moved on to corporate marketing at this introduction that my father had made. So we didn't get along for the first 20-something years of my life, but yet that one call changed the course of history for me. So I appreciate what fathers do.
Yeah, same exact thing happened for me. And my father's been instrumental in giving me a lot of key wisdoms that I've been able to use throughout my life.
You know, the foundation that you had in financial planning led to you having a career advising medical professionals who have a reputation of being the worst business people on God's green earth, that their gifts are used in medical sciences and healing people, and that focus doesn't really take them to the wealth that they can accumulate as a medical professional. What were some of the nuances that you found in dealing with medical professionals rather than dealing with the average person out there who invests?
This is a great question. One of the things that most people say, which is true, is doctors are the world's worst in investing money. But they miss the whole point. Doctors are extremely intelligent. They spent 12 years or more of their life in college learning what most of us couldn't get through if we tried a lifetime. And they become very proficient at what they do. The problem is that in order to focus their minds exclusively on what they're learning, they have no training whatsoever in anything that has to do with money or finance. If you want to know the second worst group I've ever run across, it's attorneys. It's the exact same reason. And then what happens is they have an ego. And their ego says, look how successful I am. I'm making all this money. And they assume they can naturally transfer that knowledge into something they've never done and have equal success without putting out the same amount of effort that they use to become successful.
Well, you're exactly right. One of the things that my father did was when he retired as the executive vice president of one of Macy's department stores in Pittsburgh, he wanted to get his Series 7's license and become a broker. And so he looked at this concept of if you save $1 a day, and you do that every single day, and you leave it there for years and years and years, and you use dollar cost averaging, in 30 years you would be a millionaire just at 6% compounded interest, which is what passbook savings were at that time. And he began this simple concept of affordability for anybody to be able to invest, to whether or not you made $20,000 a year or you made $200,000 a year. That became essential for establishing your financial security for a life. You make a statement that says that it's interesting to note that we do not receive any form of financial education in school. Nothing about money, how it works, or how to become successful financially. We learn a lot about a great many other things in school, but without the important foundational knowledge about personal finance, the chances of having a bright financial future are significantly diminished.
Yeah, the interesting thing that I want to go to about something you were just talking about and what your father did and the investments of small amounts of money, if part of what you earn every year is set aside to grow for the future, if you can just defer elevating your lifestyle for a little time. I'm going to give you a great example. Doctors live hand to mouth, baked beans to get through, et cetera, while they're in school. It's a very expensive proposition. They get out, they immediately start making some really nice money, and then that starts growing and growing and growing. And what I used to see is doctors' incomes would expand, their lifestyle would immediately expand accordingly. And it would continue to expand and continue to expand, and it never stopped. And then you reach a point that if you tried to go back just 10%, you can't. You've already expanded to learn to live within the boundaries of that new revenue or income. Now, if a person, while they're starting to earn more money, can learn at the same time, put aside some of that money, and that money can grow. That becomes like children. You put them aside. They're going to grow up, and they're going to have a family. And you put in more money the next year and more money. Ultimately, that family starts to grow into children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And you can start using the returns on those investments, which are the children and great-grandchildren down the road, to buy the things you want today and have a lot more than you would have if you just started today consuming everything you earned.
When did we get to the point where we know these lessons, we've heard this principle, if you get a raise, pay yourself first, set aside 50%, don't increase your lifestyle 100%, don't consider the raise if you were comfortable before you got the raise, use a little bit of it, but the rest of it set aside for the future. But at 25 or 30 or 35 years old, we are indestructible. The future will come, we'll deal with it then, but right now we have cars, we have homes, we have children, we're thinking about tuition, we're thinking about medical expenses, we listen to the Dave Ramseys and we make sure that we have that emergency fund set aside. We reduce credit card debt to make it something that's livable. We're not continuing to be a slave to the bank. And yet Americans are so in debt, so completely covered up with 18 and 21% credit card interest that I believe the average person now carries $10,000 worth of credit card debt at all times. How did this happen?
A lot of it happens because we're working on an autopilot. We kind of just get in the habit of doing things and we don't think a long-term strategy or process. I can promise you one thing. If you don't set aside money today, tomorrow, and ongoingly, when you get down the road and you're 60, 65 years old, you're going to have nothing. And all you're going to end up doing is what two-thirds of the people in the United States end up dependent on their Social Security checks. That's not a lot of money on which to live. So one of the things I try to help people see is that if you can set aside some money early on, you're getting more time for your money to grow. You don't have to have that much money. It's one of the concepts in the book is that time is more important in your investments than having more money, because you can turn around and I'll just give you an example. My father at one point asked me, would I rather have $1 million or a penny that would double in value for every one of the 64 squares on the checkerboard? Now, the answer is kind of a trick. The penny grows to a number that is so large I can't pronounce it. It has 18 zeros after it. Now, time is your squares on the checkerboard. If you take investments, and let's just say that one person starts at age 30 and another starts at age 36, and they invest the same amount of money, and let's assume I'm going to just take a number 12% just because that's a simple number because it doubles every 6 years. Well, if the first person that started at 30, and you look at the person who started at 36, the 36-year-old, let's say, had 500,000, the first person's going to have $1 million. That's because they got one little square extra on that checkerboard. And that didn't double the first square's value. It doubled the last square's value. Does this make sense?
It does.
So what you want to see is the value of time. If I can start just a little earlier, I can have twice as much money. That becomes a big motivator. And if people have the proper motivations, they usually get pretty good at getting what they want. I mean, people have a home because they want a home. They have a car because they want a car. They don't have a kid's education fund, and they don't have a retirement fund. And the reasons are those are too abstract to be able to figure out what to do. You know, coming up with enough money all at one time to retire, what do I do? How do I know? I don't do anything because I don't know what to do. We need to apply the same process we did to getting a home, which we can't write a check for at one time. We figure that out and break it down into smaller monthly payments, and we find it to a finite number. We can then make a choice. Do I want to have this home or that car, or do I want to buy this TV? I can now choose because everything's nice and concrete. And the relationship of money we deal with at a concrete level, not at an abstract level. One of the things I teach in the book is the science of navigation. That takes impossible journeys and breaks them down into smaller steps, baby steps, they're called coordinate points. And using this theory, you can break any long-term goal down and bring it back and find out what you need to invest a month to get there. And then you can choose. And there's no discipline required. You can choose which is more important because you can weigh one against the other. You've been doing that your entire life. You can determine that which car you're going to have. You can determine what house you're going to have. You get to choose based on the finite amount of income you have.
Jody, you write from not theoretical, but you write from personal experience. In 1985, you retired, but something happened during that retirement period that caused you to have to come full face with what many people face in their life, and that is a change in the economy, the oil situation. You're in Texas and facing this devastating situation. Your clients are also facing similar kind of challenges in their life, but yet you are able to start over, rebrand, retool, and come out with a new focus. How did you do that?
It's interesting because you point out, I mean, I was very successful from the time I was 16 on. And I read a book, it was called I Can. It's a terrific book. And it taught me how to program my mind toward my long-term future financial goals and how to expect those and visualize those. And they kept happening. And I started programming for these fantastic things to occur, and they kept happening. And as they happened, I'd go program more. And this is all explained in the first part of the book because it's such an important key part to becoming successful financially. But along the way, it kept going to the point and point and point. I became worth $35 million by the time I was 35 years old. I was actually worth $38 million. And I made a decision at that point in time, I've got more than enough. I'm going to retire. And I did. And I was doing things that worked. I was cyclically investing. I was a contrarian in my philosophy. I was running cycles. I understood it all. Then something way beyond the scope of what anybody would normally think happened. I lived in Texas. I had all my money in real estate in Texas. And I had enough money to go through a normal recession and carry my investments during that without any problem. But Texas went into a depression, not a recession, in 1987. And it lasted until 1995. And it didn't come back in 24 months or 36 months like. And it took the entire state down. Every single bank in our state except one went bankrupt. And all of the industries that were the core foundational pieces, the cattle, the oil, the real estate, all failed. And it was disastrous here. I've got to be candid. I was depressed for a long period of time. And finally, things came around. I got back doing what I knew how to do when the market recovered. And fortunately enough, I started investing again in late 94 or 5, and I was retired again by the time I was 2000.
You tell the story of the billionaire cab driver. A commie came, and you talk in the book about this incredible story that comes out of an island, Kikilau, which is a Polynesian island. It is extraordinary because the entire island is in a state of poverty. But yet a hotel sees this beautiful place and decides they want to build there. But yet the island does not have the way to purify water. And the hotel needs to have purified water, and they need a desalination plant. And it's going to cost $15 million. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this cab driver, who is the only taxi cab driver on the entire island, writes a check for $15 million and becomes the joke of the island, except for one key factor. The check clears. And all of a sudden, the story begins to break across the globe that this cab driver is worth $20 billion. Introduce us to this cab driver, this billionaire cab driver.
His name is Akmai Khani, and he is a poor boy from the islands. He worked in the sugarcane fields like everybody else, and sugarcane was a dreadful work requirement. I mean, they worked sun up to sundown in the fields and made almost nothing, just enough to survive. And he always wanted to become successful. And he runs into a person as he's working at a hotel. He finally gets a job working at one of the lone, small little bed and breakfast inns, and a traveler comes through and introduces him to a lot of the concepts that we've been talking about, programming your mind, etc. And he does a lot of stuff that's explained in the book, and he ultimately becomes very successful. The storyline is, though, that everybody wanted to know how this guy went from nothing to 20 billion. And he didn't want to spend the rest of his life answering the telephone and giving interviews, teaching everybody what he was doing. So he agreed to allow one writer to come and interview him. And he had a contest where the writers could submit their favorite piece, and he would select from that who he wanted to tell his life story. And this book is actually written by this author who won the right. His name is Dan Langston. And he goes and he visits with Akamai the first day, and he gets a one-day tour with him around the island in his cab. And that's all he gets. But in that one day, the cab driver is able to show him in nature all these different things happening and how those same rules in nature apply to finance and how you can use them and change your life. And the whole goal of the book is to make it fun so that you can learn through this fun story all these critical processes and philosophies that are necessary to have a successful financial future.
You emphasize in the opening chapters about enjoying life. And if you enjoy life, the work won't seem so bad. There's an underlying philosophy here in the book that kind of takes you on a journey of it's not the power of positive thinking, but it's ordering your thoughts, programming your mind to harness a certain power which exists in your mind to grab a hold of these concepts. You spend a great deal of time laying the foundation of a power in programming your mind. Why is that important?
It's very important. The book that I mentioned, I Can, which was written by Ben Sweetland, he explored this concept. That's the first time I was exposed to it. But it's basically, we all know we have a conscious mind, which we used to think, and that's what's going on right now. We're using our conscious mind as we listen to this broadcast, and you and I are talking, etc. Then we have this subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is huge in comparison in size to the conscious mind. I mean, it's the size of a BB to a watermelon, if you wanted to compare them in actual relationship. Now, most people immediately assume their subconscious mind is in control. They're depressed, now, it's just what's going on. They don't understand that the conscious mind, this little BB, is totally controlling what the subconscious mind is doing by programming it with conversation. And it's like, I talk to it like a field. You go in a field, you plant seeds, little bitty seeds, and you fertilize them, you water them, and they grow into large plants. Well, the field doesn't care what it grows. If you plant corn, it's going to produce corn. If you plant cyanide, you're going to get a bunch of poisonous plants. So the idea is to learn to program your mind with positive seeds, positive things that you're projecting. You give the task, it's like you give it to God. You let that go into the back of your mind, and then it starts to direct your actions subconsciously towards what you're trying to achieve.
So this is a part of God's marvelous creation, that we have this part of our brain that he gives us for reason, for logic, for creating patterns. He's a God of patterns. We see so many patterns within the scriptures that take us on a journey to understanding order. This is about order. Ordering priorities, ordering discipline, and ordering your mind to be able to focus on the larger good in all things, in all aspects of our life. You talk about the fact that you can't really achieve your goals unless you have a clear path to get to those goals. But you also emphasize that it's not the goal, it's the journey. It's the waypoints along the way as you navigate this journey. How do you set those waypoints?
That's very good. When you have goals, you have to sit down and define them first. Now, most people don't have any defined retirement goal. I'm going to take that as an example. For me, defining retirement is determining what year you want to retire. It's determining how much income on today's basis you want to have then. It's determining what it's going to cost then with a projected inflation you believe is going to be accurate to get you from here to then. And then you look at the amount of income you have to have in retirement, and you then look to the next step, which is how large an estate do you need to have that when invested will produce that income. And when you can start answering those questions, you now have identified where you want to go. I want you to think of something. A captain of a ship in San Francisco going to Hawaii is going to arrive 99% of the time. However, if you and I got in a boat without any navigational training and we got our compass, we figured out where Hawaii was and we set sail, we would fail 99.9% of the time. The reason is once we set sail, we had that elusive little goal. It was a place on the compass, and we were headed that way. Winds blow us off course, currents travel us in another direction, and if you miss Hawaii by 5 miles on the water, you won't see it. You keep sailing and sailing and sailing. You'll end up in Japan further away than when you started. So you have to be able to identify clearly, articulate, what's my goal? And you need to then define it. That's all discussed in the book, is how you go about going through those steps to be able to come up with that clear, visible goal. Then you have to take that and bring it forward back. Say, okay, I want to have $750,000 in 30 years, or whatever the number is. And I can earn this amount on my investments. How much do I have to invest every year to get from here to there? You break that down by the month. I'll just give you a real simple example. If I want $750,000 and I have 30 years to get there, I can't write a check for that today and have it. And it seems impossible. How will I have $750,000? But if I put away $4,500 a year at 10%, just as an example, then in 30 years, that's going to be $750,000. $4,500 is $400 a month. That's a car payment. I get to choose now. I'm out there looking at a new car and I'm looking at my retirement. What's most important for me? And you don't have to sacrifice anything because you already know how to get what you want most. That happens automatically. Same thing with your kids' education. You bring that down to a dollar amount per month and you're then making a choice. And if you go out there and look at that car and you look at the kids' education, if you want the car more, you're going to get the car, and tough luck kids. If you want the kids' education more, those monies will put aside and you will drive the existing car you have a little longer. And that's the concept.
Well, it's a fabulous concept. You're applying the laws of drift. So when you apply the laws of drift, you have to adjust for the conditions of the current and the wind. the same way we have to adjust our plan based on the economy, about changing factors in the economy, increases, decreases, economic shifts. And there is a pattern and a cycle over the course of 50 or 60 years that it's fairly predictable. Although in Texas, that longer period of time was...
Yeah, something can always throw another wrench into... You can have a hurricane you weren't planning on. But if you follow what you're saying, you're looking at the currents, you're looking at the winds, you're adjusting for them yearly, you're staying on course.
It's a fascinating story. We're talking with Jody Tallal, author of The Billionaire Cab Driver, brought to us by WND Books. Happens to be officially releasing on tax day this year, April the 18th, but is currently available right now through Amazon, and you can get to that through the Books and Media page at ignitinganation.com. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk to Jody about the Rule of 72. Stand by and we'll be right back. And Biblical Truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're visiting with Jody Tallal, author of the newly released book, Billionaire Cab Driver, Timeless Lessons for Financial Success, from our partner at WND Books. Jody, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
When we went to break, we mentioned the Rule of 72. The Rule of 72, is that a formula, a pattern, a secret to financial success?
Rule 72 is very important to learn because it's actually my favorite little mathematical tool or formula. It allows you to determine, if you know the rate of return, how long it will take for your money to double in value. Now, it's very simple. You can divide any yield, the percentage yield, into the number 72, and the answer is the number of years for the money to double. So if I have, for example, a 6% investment return, if I divide 6 into 72, the answer is 12. In 12 years, I'll have twice as many dollars as I started with today at that yield. If it's an 8% yield, it will take 9 years. That's, again, 8 divided into 72 equals 9.
You know,
if it's 9%, it takes 8.
Right. There was a point in time when passbook savings and CDs were paying 8%, were paying 6%. But in today's environment, we're getting a fraction of 1% as a return on passbook savings or on certificates of deposit. So these are not long-term financial strategies in today's market, because taking 1% and dividing it by 72 says it's going to take you 72 years to double that money. So how do we apply this to real estate investments? How do we apply this to stock market? How do we look at things like REITs or real estate investment trust funds, or things that tell us through mutual funds or a balanced portfolio of what we might to expect based on the average yields over a 10 or 15-year period?
It's a great question, because one of the things that the Rule of 72 will teach you and help direct you is trying to determine if what you're investing in has any chance of getting you where you want to go. And if it doesn't, it will help direct you to look for higher yields or whatever. And it works in reverse too, and I'll get into that in a second. It works against inflation, because inflation is the same thing as investment yield. It's just negative instead of positive. But let's go back for a second. Let's say that I am earning 1%. I can immediately say I can't save myself to retirement because I don't have a whole lot of 72s. Those are squares on the checkerboard. I can't wait 72 years every time for it to double. So that's going to help push me into other investments, and it will help direct me. And I'll have to get a little more aggressive and a little more aggressive and a little more aggressive until I find the level that gets me where I want to go. Now, the other thing that's important is once I start getting closer towards retirement and I start getting closer towards what I need, I can start becoming more conservative then, because now I need to step back a little bit. And again, the Rule 72, all we have to do, I mean, it doesn't care what you're earning. It's just going to tell you how long it's going to take. And that's going to help you make some key decisions as to what's going to work for you. Now, I mentioned inflation a second ago. Inflation is negative yield. Where money is making, where positive yield investments are making your dollars double, inflation's making your purchase power cut in half. So if you're trying to figure out what's the impact of inflation, You can take the inflation rate, divide that into the number 72, and it'll tell you how long it's take for things to double. And I want to warn you, don't use CPI, because CPI doesn't really affect a lot of the things we're trying to plan for. College educations, for example, have skyrocketed year after year for decades now, and it doesn't come anywhere close to CPI. So you need to be looking at the rate of growth that inflation is causing education to go up, and use that yield to determine how much money it's going to take in the future to educate your children. So, for example, if I know that the cost of education is going up 8% a year or 10% a year, which it is, and I can tell you, all right, at 8%, that's going to need 9 years. That cost of education will be twice as much as it is today. I better plan to have twice as many dollars than I thought I needed.
These factors that weigh heavily require that you be a disciplined investor, that you actually know what's going on with your finances, that it is not random, it is not accidental, it must be completely intentional. And this is your basic premise in the book, is that you have to have this order. You have to have this programming in your mind to be able to say that I can see the future. Now, there are strategies which you adjust along the way as you age. You can invest more aggressively at 25 than you can at 50. But those things are factored into this concept, that you begin to adjust based on time and season as well. Now,
Absolutely.
we know there's two fundamental golden rules of life. One is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The second one is he who has the gold makes the rules. But you introduce another golden rule into this equation, and what is that golden rule of financial management?
Well, that's a great segue from the last question, because if you're looking for the single major financial golden rule, this is the answer. There are no financial golden rules. The situation is changing. It's volatile. It's always shifting because of the fact that all of the factors in the economy, inflation, investment yield, income tax rates, all of these things change. And as they change, what's right and wrong to do also changes. So fixed concepts for a lifetime of always pay cash, never borrow, that may be perfectly correct today. But I can show you times back in the past where they were the absolute worst thing you could possibly do. At times of 16% inflation, like we had in 1981.
Right.
And tax rates that were 50% on your income. And you're now earning money and giving half of it away to the government, and then you have to have that money earn enough to equal inflation. Well, you can't get there always doing that. I can show you where there's something called good debt versus bad debt. I have a formula in the book that goes through, and you just apply these rules and it will tell you what to do. As the economy changes, what you should do changes with it. And using these type of formulas will give you the tools to be able to automatically adjust to be able to know what you need to do next.
You wrote the book through the lens of a author traveling with this billionaire cab driver who's imparting financial wisdom, but he's also imparting a philosophical foundation of understanding about what's important in life. When we begin to evaluate financial security as being a top goal, or quality of life, or do what you love and the money will follow. There's so many different messages that are out there, but the core message of your book, if we were to sum it up to what is the underlying message, what is the button that I'm going to push when I read this book that's going to turn on the stadium lights? Right now the stadium's dark, but there's one switch, the master switch. What's that master switch in the Billionaire Cab Driver?
I think there's several, unfortunately. I'm going to highlight the top 3 or 4.
Okay.
The first one is that I have control over what's going on in my mind. If I can learn to listen into the conversations I'm having with myself, I can start asking myself, is this a positive conversation? Is this a negative conversation? I'm planting seeds in my subconscious. Those seeds are going to grow. What do I want a field of? Do I want a field that's a healthy crop do I want a poisonous field? If you can start creating this discipline, and it gives you key ways to know when you're off track. I'm going to give you a simple example now, okay? Your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. That's it. It can't focus on two exact same things at the same time. So you're going to be focusing, and that to me is like this spotlight that's moving around inside your brain, okay? Now, I want you to think for just a second about something in the last 2 weeks that occurred where you were feeling great. You were very excited. You were very happy. Take just a moment. I want you to get that firmly in your mind.
Okay.
Because there's bound to be something in the last 2 weeks that, boy, that was a great moment. I love that. All right? Now get that feeling. Now, I want you to now go over the same 2 week period and find something where you were really distraught. You felt terrible. Maybe it was a terrible day. You were having trouble getting through it. I want you to focus on that for a moment. Now, what's the difference? You're still here. You have the same assets. You have the same everything. But where you're focusing your brain is going to determine how you're feeling. So it's a spotlight. The day that you were thinking great things, you were focused exclusively on how wonderful those things were. The day that you were having such a terrible day, that was when you were focusing on all the terrible. But both were present in your world. You were having positive and negative side by side, but you were focusing on one or the other. Now, you can look at what you feel in your body, and that will help you determine where you're focusing. On a bad day, you might notice your chest is getting tight. You're having trouble breathing. You know, all these different feelings, sensations. When you start becoming cognizant of that, you can start saying, whoa, what am I thinking about? And you can start looking at, where do I have my spotlight focused? I don't like that, and start changing it. That's a major key point for me, because now you can change what you're thinking, what you want, what you're programming, and your life will change simultaneously. Maybe you aren't destined for always losing, not getting ahead. Maybe you are destined for getting whatever you want. This can help you get there. All right, so that's one key element. Science of navigation is another. We need to use that science to break the abstract things of the future needs that we have down to concrete variables that we can take action. I think that is also critical.
You know, one of the things that I was able to take away from the book is that you make a strong case for setting aside more time to invest, because that's really more important than having more money.
Absolutely.
But that's, to the average person, that might seem illogical. That how can having time to invest be more important than having the money? Help us walk through that and understand it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because when I was working with doctors, I see the same thing. They say, okay, I'm not making much now. I'm not going to invest now. I'm going to be making a lot more in 10 years. I'll start investing a lot more then. They could never get there because they were taking squares off the checkerboard. And if you understand that rule of 72 and you figure out how long it's going to take for your money to double, you need as many squares on the checkerboard as you get. Time is a square, not more money. That's critical. The other thing to focus on is that if you're thinking the right thoughts, you're programming properly, it's going to direct your subconscious where you don't have to work on this so hard. Things happen by osmosis. My first set of goals that I wrote down on a 3x5 card at 16 were physically impossible. I was doing what I was directed in the book, I Can't. And I visualized those things as if they were real, as if I already had them. I mean, and that included living in a 5-bedroom home when I was living in an apartment with 5 step-brothers and sisters at that age. So I'm visualizing having this 5-bedroom home with a swimming pool. I'm visualizing having 2 cars, a Lincoln Continental and a Corvette. I'm visualizing having a car telephone, which I promised you back in 1966 when I was doing this, that was a special deal. Right. That was your trunk take it up. I mean, That was James Bond stuff. So I was visualizing all these. I wanted to go around the world. I wanted to have $10,000 in the bank, which was a fortune. I had none of this. I was a kid sitting in an apartment visualizing this stuff. But I played the game. I read that 3x5 card religiously. I did it 10, 12, 15 times a day for weeks until I lost it. Now, an interesting thing happened to me. I stopped thinking about it. I didn't do anything else. And 3 years later, I'm moving out of a house because I'm now leaving St. Louis to move back to Dallas, my home. The house I'm moving out of, there's something on. I'm putting stuff in the bookshelves into a box, and all of a sudden, one of the books opens up, and this little 3x5 card falls out, and I read it, and I was absolutely riveted. I mean, it was an amazing moment for me. because I was moving out of a 5-bedroom home with a swimming pool. In my driveway, I had a Lincoln Continental. I had a Porsche. I guess I changed taste in sports cars. I had gone around the world in my senior year of high school for 3 months. I had my clothes custom tailored, which was also on the list. Everything on that list had happened. I grabbed another 3x5 card and I wrote, I want to have a Rolls Royce. I want to be worth $5 million by the time I'm 25, and so on and so on. And it kept working.
So this is the program you're talking about. You're talking about creating an intentional lifestyle of setting clear goals. Now, this is really a great program if you're 25 or 30. What if you're 45 or 50? What if you're 55 and you finally realized as you're looking out, you can't see a way to get there? Is it too late?
Okay, it's never too late to start. If you start today, you'll have a whole lot more than if you don't and don't do anything. You may have to work longer. You may not get to retire at 65. You might have to work to 72 or even 75. But you'll have security later on after that. You have to start. So if you missed the boat at 20 or 25 or 30, which 95% of us did,
right,
it's never too late to get on the train and start traveling in the right direction where you want to go.
Do you think people have adopted somewhat of a defeatist attitude and say that it's, the opportunity has passed me by, it's just too much?
That's a conversation. That's those negative seeds you're planting in your brain, and they're going to make that happen.
So if we take a look at really what Scripture tells us in Matthew 6, why do you worry? You can't add a single day to your life. You can't make your hair change color. You can go to the store and get it done. You can't grow any hair if you don't have any hair. You really don't have a whole lot that you should be worried about. You should embrace each day. Each day has enough trouble of its own. But today is truly, as the old adage says, the first day of the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
And when you embrace that concept, you begin to say, do I want tomorrow to be better than today? It's really not so much of a 20 years from now goal as it is how I'm going to take the next step in the progression to get to that goal, to that point of retirement. Now, in 5 years, you take the temperature barometer, you're spending more time looking at this, you begin to adjust for economic situations. I can't think of a better time in the last 20 years than to start today with a shift in our economy. That we have this opportunity. We have a new president. We have a new Congress. We have new opportunities for going back to the Reagan-esque period when we were coming out of the Jimmy Carter years. Well, we're coming out of another Jimmy Carter kind of administration, and we have the opportunity to increase defense spending, to increase oil exploration and become an energy independent nation. We have jobs creation for many corporations coming back, which can not only increase our economy and the return on the bottom line of these companies that are bringing jobs home. So to the prudent investor, he's going to look at the economic situation and say, wait a second, in the last 20 years, this is the best time to get back on the horse or to even get on the horse and begin to look at this market. So as we apply these principles, are there pitfalls? Are there those appealing traps out there that we should avoid? Those things that constantly, historically bite us, that we need to make sure that we take a certain amount of a much broader view of what's happening than the tunnel vision of get rich quick?
I think that gets back to a very simple concept, and that is that what you're focusing on as the conversation that you're living, if you're doing the same thing tomorrow in the way of thinking as you were today, then the day after that has no choice but to continue to replicate over and over and over again. If you don't like the way things are going, change the conversation, get something going different, give yourself new possibilities, because there are no possibilities when you already are doing the same thing that you did yesterday today. That's going to produce tomorrow to look like today. I mean, that's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So if you change the whole thought process, maybe there's a home-based business you can get into, change your level of income. Maybe you can start investing in rent properties. There's all kinds of opportunities that could come up that if you change what you think you can and cannot do, will occur. And that's the whole takeaway from this. It's new fields of opportunities are expanding daily. Get involved, figure out where they are. Put yourself in the game, have a chance.
How do we learn how to get the highest and best use of every dollar? You devote a whole chapter to this concept that money is a boundary that defines how you get to live. Learning to live within this boundary is essential, but there's some surprising facts that how a person making $95,000 a year can have the same lifestyle as somebody making $250,000 a year. That sounds almost too good to be true. Yeah,
it does, doesn't it? You know, people think I can't have a good lifestyle, but the fact is that you just pointed out in the book we show that a person with a $95,000 a year income can have identically the same lifestyle as somebody with $275,000, and they do. If you look at it, they're both driving nice cars. They've got electric windows. They have stereos. They have cruise control. They have sunroofs. One guy's driving a Chevrolet. The other guy's driving a car with a star on the hood. Multiply that times 2. All of a sudden, that's a difference in where that income's going from the 275 versus the 95. They both live in beautiful homes. You know, one of them's got a bedroom that may be 14 by 16. The other one's got a bedroom that's 16 by 20. I promise you, when you close your eyes, you don't see that when you're sleeping. And it doesn't live any differently. You know, one's got a cultured marble tub, the other one's got an Italian marble tub in the bathroom. It just continues on and on and on and on. And if you look at it, then get rid of these I wants, and look at what you need. All of a sudden, things will shift for you. Now, you asked about the highest and best use of your money. Probably the most important concept there is in financial planning. You have a finite amount of money that you're going to receive every year. Now, I don't know what that is, but I can promise you at the last day of the year, it won't be 1 penny more or less than what it is. The same thing's true for your lifetime. You have a lifetime of income. It's finite. At the end of your lifetime of earnings, you can go back and say, that's exactly how many dollars I had to live with. How well you use that money every year and whether you get the highest and best use of that money is going to determine where you are in your future. Let me give you an example. If you will drive the extra 2 miles to save 10 cents on a gallon of gasoline, you're getting the same gasoline in your car. You're going the same number of miles, but there's now $2 that wasn't consumed that you have to replace that's now available to put aside. If you use that ongoingly every time you fill up a tank of gas, there's new money that's now available to put towards your kid's education fund or towards your retirement that wasn't there a minute ago. Take that and magnify it out on everything you do. Do you go and see something and I want that and buy it right now? Or do you take a little time and look and shop around and see who might have that same exact item for less dollars? Because when you buy the item, you're consuming those dollars out of that finite income stream and they're gone forever. And you're replacing them with that new item that you bought.
So a fundamental concept would be that if I budget $700 for a TV and I can buy it for $500, that I take that $200 that I budgeted and invest it as opposed to spend it on some other indulgence. And we need to frame our consumer consciousness to an investment as opposed to a consumption. And
absolutely.
That's the framework in which the Billionaire Cab Driver takes you. We've got just a few seconds left in this segment, but do I need a financial planner? If I read the Billionaire Cab Driver, will I be able to navigate my own waters, or do I need a professional?
Yeah, that's my hope. I hope it will give you some great tools to make dramatic changes in your financial future.
And that's what we're looking for. Billionaire Cab Driver, Timeless Lessons for Financial Success, author Jody Tallal, a fabulous read, an entertaining read, a humorous read, and it takes you on a journey with the Billionaire Cab Driver who applied these same principles in his life to become the man world-renowned as the Billionaire Cab Driver. A great story, a great gift as we come up on tax day to yourself to change the course of your financial life. Jody Tallal, thank you so much for being with us here to share the Billionaire Cab Driver with us. We wish you great success. Hope to see you again, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you.